It's amazing.
Moving right into laughter, right?
I wouldn't have believed it.
I know, amazing. Well, good evening and welcome to K97.942 News, the news for yous. My name is Kurt Clammy-Pants.
And I'm Sandy Toodwhistle.
Tonight, Senate inquiry into the papers scandal has moved into its third week in the High Court today. The inquiry, which has been running for around 3 months now, is looking into claims that the federal government has illegally and unconstitutionally used new surveillance and anti-terror measures to spy on citizens who fall outside the purview of such laws. The papers have revealed that federal and state agencies have been targeting academics and activists with no known affiliation to terrorist organisations or individuals with unwarranted surveillance. The appeal to the High Court is in reaction to the federal government's unwillingness to disclose or discuss the details laid out in the papers and in the Senate inquiry on accounts of national security and operational integrity. We cross to Sandy Tootwhistle, our reporter on the field, who is on location at the High Court currently. How are things going over there, Sandy?
Great.
Thanks, Kurt. Well, for your average punter, today's hearing was not the courtroom drama that many would have hoped for. However, despite the seemingly low-key proceedings, this is in fact a landmark case in Australian history, which, if it proceeds, could be catastrophic for the government and the dozens of agencies that have been implicated by the papers scandal. What we are seeing here is an escalation from the Senate inquiry, which has thus far only been able to deal with content from the papers themselves, and which has been met with almost unanimous silence from anyone who has been brought before the panel. The government has offered to come to the table, so long as any discussion of security matters is done behind closed doors. However, the inquiry has labelled this option as insufficient and evasive. Whilst this may sound like political posturing, this move to the Supreme Court is in fact a very aggressive move on the part of the inquiry board. This has most probably been brought about by the revelation that members of the Senate have been targeted by the very same intelligence apparatus that they are investigating. If the appeal is successful, the Supreme Court will effectively grant the inquiry the power to freely question and compel answers from the Prime Minister, Governor-General, and Directors of Security and Counter-Terrorism, and any of their staff, not to mention the directors from ASIO and ASIS and the other agencies involved. If this goes ahead, we may not only see the second dismissing of a standing Prime Minister in Australian history, but also the removal of the Attorney-General. Back to you in the studio.
Troubling times.
Thanks, Sandy. We have with us today Dr. Gav McTweedy, Professor of Political Sciences at Chaos University. Dr. McTweedy, thank you for joining us. Could you please explain to our audience what is happening in Canberra?
Thank you. At the moment, the government is dealing with the implications that these leaks have brought. These leaks were sourced from an anonymous whistleblower who had access to TelcoX's metadata. This information revealed requests by Australian anti-government agencies to observe certain members of the public. However, the data undeniably showed an interest in seemingly innocent civilians, all of whom had no affiliation to extremist groups or individuals. Furthermore, these people being monitored, such as academics and political commentators, seem to share views and ideologies which criticise the Australian government. These anti-terrorist agencies, ASIO and ASIS, have attempted to reach towards these people's census information, Medicare details and credit card details. The actions of the government in the pursuit of these individuals' information seriously brings the Australian government's ethics into question. As a result, the trust between the Australian government and the Australian public is under extreme stress at the moment. This is a poor run for the government, considering their secretive and unethical treatment of asylum seekers, as well as the complicity shown in the Snowden papers. This trust has been eroded to the point where they have to prove they are being ethical, rather than us, the public, assuming that on good faith. Unsurprisingly, the government is avoiding addressing the actual contents of the paper during this trial by media, funneling most of their efforts into finding the source of the leak and blaming the previous government. However, the agencies responsible for the activities, ASIO and ASIS, are completely unaffected by which branch of government is in power at any time. This means that these policies and practices will not just go away with a change of government and will be handed on to successive administrations regardless of their ability or inability to wield them. As such, the bipartisan bickering over which major party is to blame distracts from the fact that these organisations are at the core of the issue. After all, they are established in order to maintain national security. Our human rights and anti-terrorism laws are enacted in order to protect us. Yet the Australian government appears to be adapting their definition of natural interest to suit themselves. The government, during this hearing, needs to seriously defend and justify the surveillance of academics, those who spoke out against the institution, as a form of counter-terrorism. Because as far as most of the public is concerned, and the papers are concerned, the Australian government have used the powers entrusted to them by the voters to serve their own ends and interests without transparency or consultation with the Australian people. Back to you.
Thank you, Dr. McTweedy. And that's all the time we have for tonight. I am Kurt Clammypants.
And I'm Sandy Tootwhistle.
And thank you for joining us, and we'll see you on the beach.